It's just going 6 o'clock. I'll just start off with some general information. The hearing loops should be operative at this moment in time for members and members and officers. Please remember to switch off microphones on to speak directly into the microphone and switch off again after speaking. The meeting this evening will be live streamed to the public, and a recording of the meeting will be available on the council website within 24 hours of the meeting. Please also switch off your mobile phones or put them on silent. If there's any emergency evacuation, please turn left, follow the green emergency exit signs to the main town hall entrance and proceed to the assembly point at St. George's Square. I'll start with the apologies of absence.
Yes, Chair. Apologies from Councillors Alia Khan, Councillor Simmons and Councillor Skeppelhorn.
Okay, and the next item we have the election of Vice Chair.
Can I have a nomination, please, for Vice Chair? Is that seconded? Yeah, okay, thank you. So, Councillor... No.
Can I consider that carried, members? Are we all in favour of this? I just make it formal. Okay, welcome. Okay, if members agree me signing the minutes of the meeting last held. Okay, are there any section 106 to disclose?
None that I'm aware of, Chair. None, Chair.
Okay, moving on to the items. There's been a slight change in the order as I've been requested to take item number 2 first. So it's a petition implementing of speed cameras on Grange Avenue. Can we have the lead officer?
Yes, Chair. This petition has been submitted with regard to residents stating that vehicles regularly travel along Grange Avenue in excess of the speed limit, and that this speed is resulting in contributory damage to property, motor vehicles, etc. We have conducted a survey along Grange Avenue over a 7-day period for 24 hours, and the results of the 85th percentile from that survey has shown the average speed to be 25 miles per hour. The speed limit along there is actually 30. So in other words, the current speeds of traffic averagely fall below the speed limit of the road. We further looked at accident damage along Grange Avenue for the past 5 years to the present day, which demonstrates 9 slight record accidents along Grange Avenue between 18 and 22 and I won't bother reading those, but they're quite clearly slight accidents and nothing with any major injuries. Grange Avenue is a very busy route, and as such, there will be times when, I'm not going to read directly from this, but there will be traffic moving along there in excess of the 30 miles an hour, but obviously, significantly, there are times when it's busy when they will be below that. We have to take into account that as a result of that being a busy route, there will be vehicles that are operating for the police and other services who may well be in excess of the 30 limit. It's been suggested to look at a 20 mile per hour speed limit. We've discussed this with our partners in the police force, and they would be against introducing that. I think the data demonstration is showing that together with complaints to Bedfordshire Police, that there's no immediate problems, and therefore we would recommend that speed cameras were not placed into Grange Avenue.
Okay, thank you, officer. Is there a lead petitioner or? Okay, can I first take questions from members to the officer? Are there any questions? Okay, can I call the lead petitioner? If you
Sorry, can I just ask that you sit on the... Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Do you want to use the other microphone?
Use that one at the end.
Yeah. Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to at least listen to the debate. It was interesting, over a 7-day period, 25 miles an hour average, and it was also interesting to listen to a description of what's called minor damage. The accident that preempted this petition was 5 cars written off, 3 garden walls demolished, and the police called to close the road for a number of hours. I don't really regard that as a minor damage. I've only lived there for 18 months, 19 months, but talking to people on a road, along that road, there's at least 10 neighbours have had their gardens demolished, front gardens demolished. There's at least been a 12 loss of cars in the last few years. And so, whilst I understand the police's view that they wouldn't want to be restricted in attending emergency situations, I do really believe that there's a need to monitor traffic on a longer term basis, and a deterrent needed to stop speeding, because it is significant. A 5-car pile-up, I don't believe, 5 cars being written off by a car driving at excess speeds, I don't regard as a minor road accident. And then there was another one where just 2-3 months ago, the police had been called again. A car ended up shunting 2 cars onto the pavement into a garden wall again, and travelling in a different direction. And again, police had to be called because the road was blocked. I just think that the road isn't long, but it seems to present itself at a particular point in time of about a half-mile stretch, with an opportunity to speed from one set of lights to the other at each end of Grange Avenue. And the speed is excessive. I've been driving for 30 or 40 years, and I can tell you, living there, you put your life at risk trying to get into your car sometimes. I think another point I'd make is there's a residential care home right on Grange Avenue. I've watched people struggle to try and turn right out of there and avoid being hit by cars coming along. So there are, I think, issues on that road with speed. Yes, I take the point of a 25 mile an hour being an average speed, but it's an average over 7 days. I'm not sure whether that's really adequately describes the situation.
Okay, I just had a hand from the officer.
Yeah, perhaps I could just respond to you. One of the things is, obviously, we as the local authority are more than willing to provide systems to reduce speed wherever we can. When we install cameras, they no longer become our responsibility to operate. They're operated by the police, because anyone who's exceeding the speed limit then becomes a target for them to provide a fine to, or whatever process goes through. The difficulty they have is that very many of the people who are exceeding the speed limit, they're not insured. They don't have a driving licence, or the car is not registered to them. So they actually don't catch them in the first place, and that is part of the problem. So we have put forward a proposal to provide average speed cameras. It was due to go to scrutiny to discuss the sort of process, but the police are definitely not necessarily in favour of widespread use of these, and certainly where a speed limit such as we've indicated has shown, they would not be in favour of us enforcing it. Unfortunately, accidents that you're describing do happen, and I don't know the background to the multiple car one, but it does sound like somebody who was totally out of control and probably being chased by the police at the time when the incident occurred.
Put 20-mile-an-hour speed limits on that road, because there are 20-mile-an-hour speed limits on all the side roads around Grange Avenue. That wouldn't stop emergency vehicles, because they can go through those speed limits. They drive faster than 30 miles an hour now to get to emergencies, and that's taken as read. So I wouldn't see a problem of putting 20-mile-an-hour speed limits there for everybody, and then obviously emergency vehicles, when they blue light, they can go faster, because that happens now with a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. They will go faster when they need to.
Can I bring in the members, Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, my recollection is that if you have a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, then those who are going to speed would ignore it anyway. If they're ignoring a 30, they're going to ignore a 20. But to make a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit effective, you need the street furniture in place to try and reduce the speed. Humps, narrowing the road, etc., etc. But which would make it difficult for emergency vehicles, certainly, and buses as well. And I know when I go up to Farley on the bus on Mayrick Avenue, there are humps, and it takes him about 10 minutes to get up the top of the hill because he has to slow down, then start up and a bump in the air. It's not very comfortable, but I know the reason for it is because of speeding vehicles, and it is a 20-mile-an-hour limit. So if it's possible to have a 20-mile-an-hour limit with the associated furniture that goes with it, then I would certainly go along with that. But if the police are not going to recommend speed cameras, not much we can do about it.
Members, Councillor?
Yeah, I have two questions. So I can clearly see that the 85th percentile, so the majority of cars are driving under the speed limit, which makes sense. Do we have any data on the remaining 15 percentiles, how far above 30 they are? And secondly, basically what Dave said, are there any other traffic calming or speed calming measures that we could put in place if we're not putting speed cameras in? Thank you.
Sorry, I can provide you with data for that. I don't have it with me, but certainly we're not unused to speeds up to sort of 50 miles an hour or even greater from some that are passing through these. And then consequently there are sufficient that are well down below in order for the percentile to be met.
Any further questions from members?
Well, I've only just really got comments. 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, they're just ignored. I've got a load in my ward which haven't got the calming facility, which are just ignored completely. They just whip up and down these roads quite merrily. So I really don't know what the answer to this is, to be quite honest. I would possibly say traffic calming first and see what happens after that.
Just to add on that, can I ask you, has there been any other form of traffic calming that we could possibly consider?
No, unfortunately, you're absolutely right, Councillor. It would need speed humps or narrowing of the carriageway in order to provide that. And then when we've just recently introduced a scheme where we've put that in and residents are unhappy in having speed humps outside their properties. So you hit one issue and then move on to another.
What about narrowing of the entrances to the road or
I think
signage? What about like the entrances to the road? You know, in some cases they narrow them to slow the traffic down. Would that help?
Again, that's something we can consider as an alternative. This was a specific request for speed cameras, and I'm not saying our recommendation is that speed cameras are not applicable in this case.
Yeah, I understand that. Okay.
So the speed cameras, clearly there's no sort of evidence to support that we need a speed camera when 85% of the cars are going at 25 miles an hour. Could we ask that you investigate some of the other traffic calming measures and report back to us? Is that a good idea?
Absolutely. Yes, thank you.
I think if members agree, we can. Does it need to come back, councillors, or? Okay. If you can ask the officer to report back on possible traffic calming measures, if all members are in agreement, I'll conclude this item. Thank you. This microphone's a bit echoing. I think I'd. Okay, thank you. I'll start with the next item, the petition regarding Kingsway, and ask the officer, this is terrible actually, this mic, sorry, if he can start presenting here, and I think we've got possibly a councillor joining us as he's in another meeting, so.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This petition has been before the board before, and I believe it was deferred for a further site visit to meet and discuss the options available. Personally went out there and met one of the homeowners to look at the situation, and we are still working on the basis that we recommend that the footway is left with bollard protection, and we've provided you with some photographic evidence of recent situations with vehicles parked, not just the one car but several cars being parked on the footway and damaging the tactile paving which is there. You'll recall that there was evidence from our own legal department confirming that we were acting correctly by the recommendation of installing this, and we have offered the homeowner a protective space for parking a vehicle adjacent to the home, and to use the entrance to Kingsway Depot at any time needed in order to facilitate any transfer of any of the patient within the house. So we believe we're trying to assist in all ways we can with the situation that exists here, but that the bollards are required in order to protect this location.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yep, question.
Who actually asked for these bollards in the first place?
We made the recommendation because it was seen that there were cars parking on the footway blocking it, so we made the recommendation ourselves that these should be placed there.
Any further questions from members, councillor?
So I didn't attend the site visit, but I have driven past. Sorry, I'll get closer to the mic. So I think myself, also Councillor Taylor, we've seen that the issue isn't that there's just one car park there, is that there's often 3 or 4 that are all parked there. And from these photos that I can see, they're blocking the pavement, and similarly, if someone was in a wheelchair or a pushchair, they'd have to edge out onto the grass, onto the road to get onto the pavement. I don't think the concern is one car being on the drive, but I think the reason why it's causing so many issues is because there's 4 of them often that are blocking the whole path, which shouldn't be allowed on any road. I guess my question is there any way that we could, there probably isn't, I'm just thinking, we could have provision for the one car to go on the drive, which would allow the elderly gentlemen to go in and out and not allow the rest? Or is it literally just the bollards are there, no cars can park, and then, yeah, or we leave it as it is there?
That is something we could investigate, but having offered a parking space adjacent to the property, which is a reserved space for the property, we feel it would be ill-advisable to allow one car, because that may encourage more than one car to then use that access point, which couldn't come from the entrance to the depot. It would have to come from the other side across the footway, and then crossing the footway we'd have to enhance and strengthen that in order to accommodate it and make sure that it wasn't parked across the footway, blocking it still.
So would there have to be a dropped curb that would go up? Is that, I'm trying to sort of envision what you mean.
Yeah, from the other direction, coming from Dunstable Road direction onto it, rather than coming in from the depot entrance side by the tactile paving.
Okay. And the other parking space that you've offered, how far is it? How feasible is it? And perhaps it's better to know from the petitioners why you wouldn't want that extra parking space. Because I completely understand having those cars on the road blocking the pavement is not safe, and it's not okay, because if someone is trying to get past, especially a disabled person or person with pushchairs, they can't get past. So I understand, but I also understand, looking at all of the evidence, that it's difficult when you have an elderly relative that does need access for carers and so on. So it would be good to know how far this parking space is. I wasn't sure where the parking space was. I've seen the road name and that sort of thing, and why it would be difficult for your family member to use that parking space instead if it was, for example, a designated disabled bay or something like that.
Yes, the parking space would be in Kingsway on the other side of the depot entrance on the left-hand side, so on the same side of the road. It's about 20-25 metres away, but as we said, they could always use the entrance directly by the tactile crossings as a means to stop there, to use that at any time to load and unload, and then to turn around safely within our area. It's not limited to that facility.
So they can still, if they were to drop off someone, if they were to drop off their relative, they could still stop outside and drop them off outside the depot. They just wouldn't be able to park there. So it wouldn't be an issue of the elderly gentleman having to walk quite a distance to the house. He would be able to be dropped off outside the depot, safely turn, and then park in this spot that's 25 metres away. Is that right?
Absolutely, that's exactly
Okay.
it, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, there was a site visit I did attend with some councillors. The question I have is, driving up towards the junction on the left, is there any possibility of putting in a disabled bay before we coming from, say, Dunstable Road, as you're coming down towards the depot and the property? There's a bit of a area that needs treating. Whilst we're addressing that, is there any scope for a disabled parking bay? Sorry.
Now, there's 2 lanes as you approach the roundabout, so the one for the straight ahead or turning left into the depot, or one turning right and going into the industrial estate. So no, there isn't space there to put a parking bay at that location.
Because I thought there was a bit of a concrete area which wasn't used, and maybe if that was enough space there to create a disabled.
No, that's not a concrete area at all. It's a grassed area, and you'll see that that's one of the places that the car is parking. There's a black car that's parking on there frequently. It was there again today, parked on the front, again accessing from the tactile paving.
Okay, any further questions or comments? Councillor Taylor?
It's just a comment, Chair, and I did have a site visit myself a couple of weeks ago, and I saw the problem of those cars that are actually parking on the pavement, counted for. There are two issues. One is we've got to make it easier for the disabled gentleman to have the carers, which is, I see from the letter. But then that's fine if he needs to be picked up or carers call to see to him. But then what are those other cars doing there?
We don't know. Obviously, when I visited, it's mainly been the white car when we visited, but then subsequently the other cars appear. Yeah, and there's that black car is just actually more or less completely blocking the pavement. Correct, yeah, and I say it's there most of the time, so I think you may all have seen it being parked there. Yes. Yeah, I think it's there was a single yellow line going down, wasn't there? Yes. Yeah, so they can't park during the day, but after 6 o'clock they're able to park outside the house. I think that is part of the problem, but I know it's going to be a difficult one to solve.
I think thinking out of the box, it might sound very silly or ridiculous. This microphone's really tough. Say if we designate the area in front of the house, although it's private property, we know this, as that to be used as the disabled bay and no other cars. If there are any other cars, then normal enforcement would take precedent. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say.
Can I just follow up? Can I just follow up on that? I did make that suggestion when we were on a site visit, and I was told that they don't provide just parking bays for people that are disabled in those houses. Yeah, I know it's been done in Luton. I know up at Cobden Street it was done. I know up in Brooms Road it's been done. So why suddenly can't we do it here?
It's called a precedent. You're setting a precedent. It may have been done in the past. What we're saying is it's incorrect to allow a tactile crossing, which is there for pedestrians and footway, to be used as an access onto the forecourt of a property.
But I thought that junction needs treatment, and I'm sure the appropriate materials with the appropriate tactiles can be put in place when it's done.
It's up to the panel to make a recommendation as to what they would like us to take away and consider. But obviously we've had a legal position in the previous report which said that what we were recommending was the correct action. And the only reason it went away was to look at the alternatives. And the alternative we have offered is a disabled bay adjacent to the property, and also to provide the facility to be able to drop off and pick up as and when required.
My only concern is obviously there'll be volume of traffic, possibly large vehicles going into the depot, and that could be causing a hazardous, if we're having a disabled person, boarding or onboarding a vehicle. I've had hands from Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, it's just one thing. If we put bollards there, would it be possible to put a lockable bollard, which could be unlocked and locked when the disabled person needs to be picked up and dropped off, or a carer needs to call?
That's an alternative you could ask us to consider, certainly.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. I think because we had this meeting, this item last meeting, and I would ask for a short general statement from the petitioners or or I think their representative, Councillor Wahid, might want to speak on, or I think Councillor Wahid might get just where we're going with this one.
I'm here to support the residents, and is there any, because I arrived late, I don't know what happened. Can I ask a question or on behalf of the applicant from the officer?
Yeah,
No?
you can ask the question. We're trying to address the issue of the disabled parking for the residents. Although I'll be honest, there is abuse of parking on the footpaths that needs to be considered. But our main concern is providing disabled parking for the resident. But if you have any questions, I'm sure the officer would be more than happy to answer them.
Yeah. No, basically, as I said last time, that it's better to resolve the issue rather than actually victimize one or two residents. And these are the most affected residents. Number 80, is it your 83? 83 is the most affected. Can I ask a question from the officer? When this two-way system was introduced in the depot, because it used to be one way, and whether this was consulted by the residents that time?
I don't know specifically when it was introduced because it predates me and I've been with council since 2016. I understand it's been in position for over 10 years and that residents adjacent to the properties, the depot, were all consulted at the time, changing it over.
Okay, thank you.
The other question is, have you actually seen the roundabout Beechwood Road and what's called Waller Avenue? Have the house they are parking and still they have the tactile crossing there as well, and that is even more dangerous. And no action has been taken. I'm not saying that you go take action, but
I think,
I'm
Councillor, if
giving
we
the
go down that
example
road,
and the
there are many
consistency.
areas of the town where traffic and parking is a problem. I know my own road where there is, I believe, some tactiles. There's always vehicles parked on it, but it's an enforcement issue. We understand that. But our main concern is, as I stress, is the disabled parking. And I think, with Councillor David Frank's recommendation and the other councillors' comments, we're looking at possibly having one parking somehow facilitate the disabled parking with perhaps a removable bollard or key lock bollard or whatever.
I think that would be helpful. I'm not against we always try to protect our
I'm sorry,
citizens.
Councillor, because you came late, because we've been discussing around the area, of allowing one vehicle with some, some kind of bollard or removable bollard when it's needed. I've had a hand from a councillor.
So we don't keep going around the same thing, could we perhaps suggest that the officers look into a lockable bollard and see if that is feasible? I don't know what others think.
So I think the resident herself, she wants to speak. I just come to support her.
I'll just bring the officer in first, then I'll ask.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Would you like to say something, sir?
I was just going to say that's certainly a very good proposal for us to take away, to look at a locking bollard to facilitate that. One of the other things I'd just like to explain about tactile paving is with the budget pressures that we have throughout the council, one of the things that we're very conscientious of is repeat visits to repair damaged tactile paving. Clearly, I had a visit only the other day to a site regarding visually impaired and why we weren't doing more to assist visually impaired. So I'm acutely aware that we've got to look after all parts of our personage here. Certainly, I do appreciate in this case, and I have been on site and met the residents and said that we will do all we can to make things as easy as we can. What I don't want really to have is a situation where it becomes a multiple parking site.
Okay, thank you. Can I just bring in a very short statement from the petitioner?
Hi, I'm one of the residents, and I just wanted to let everybody know. I know everyone's talking about my dad, who is 94 years old, schizophrenic. There's also my 27-year-old brother who suffers from ankylosing spondylitis. If you look at one of the letters from the rheumatology consultant, it explains that he's got severe arthritic hips. It's not just about my father. It also will restrict him. It will take his independence away from my brother also. I also have another brother who's on an EHC care plan. He's on the autistic spectrum. We're not asking for much. I'm asking for one car, 1 vehicle to be allowed onto the drive where we're able to facilitate a safe environment for all my siblings. I don't know, some are aware and some are not. Our mother tragically passed away many years ago, so we all take care of each other, but this black car is not ours. Also, the depot has security on site, and the security on site right next to there often parks right on the area they want to protect. The security people, they often park there themselves. So that's the main thing. We're only asking for one car to be allowed and have parking. I know you've suggested another place, but it's not feasible, and I don't think it's right for LD 94-year-old or even my brother who has arthritic hips to be walking such a far distance away.
Okay, thank you. I think we're all heading on the same direction. Councillor Wahid.
I just actually, I am very grateful to the officer. He has actually visited the site on my request, and I have actually full faith on him. And he can resolve this issue with consultation with the petitioner.
Thank you, Councillor. I agree. I mean, the officers are doing their duty, basically, you know. They're not just out there to cause problems for everybody. It's an issue that needs resolving. And I think if members agree, I'll bring Councillor Taylor in a little while. If members agree, we can ask the office to go away and look at some kind of lock bollard, and whenever the work goes carried and it can be installed. Before I put anything towards the council, I'll ask Councillor Taylor to.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I mean, the idea of the lockable bollard works in other places as well, and it allows access to anybody who needs access to any particular person who has mobility problems. Where I live, just outside of where I live, the town centre, Checker Street, there's the bungalows, disabled bungalows. And one lady, unfortunately, she's not inside, she has a parking space just off Checker Street. And she used to go out and somebody had parked there. So what solved it, she had a bollard put in there, a lockable bollard. So when she comes in, she locks the bollard. When she goes out, she just pulls out and then locks the bollard. And it's been like that for 3 years now, and she's never had a problem. Those that need access have access. Those that don't need access don't get in. Simple as that.
I agree. Any further councillors? Could I put it to the committee that we ask the officer to investigate a possible, some kind of lock bollard? Yeah. Okay, that's carried. All agreed. Thank you. I'll close the meeting. Thank you for everyone to coming.